济州的 Center College，Center College 的井上美丽老师来给我们介绍一下他的项目建设经验。井上美丽老师在 Center College 目前是助理教授班，但是很快就会是副教授的啊，然后也会是我们肯塔基州中文协会的下任会长。呃美丽老师呢的博士是在斯坦福大学拿的中国文学的博士。然后他的兴趣非常广泛，这个我都不知道用中文怎么说啊，包括 transnational exchange, gender politics, performance and remix studies in modern Chinese literature, theater and visual culture。呃，然后他的研究获得了很多的外部资金的支持，包括 Council on Library and Information Resources Mellon Fellowship，应该是非常 非常 competitive 的 fellowship。还有 Stanford Humanities Center 的资金，还有 Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies。然后他的最新的两个出版那叫发表是吧？都一个是在 Journal of Chinese Cinemas，另外一个是在 International Comparative Literature，一个是关于江青的，一个是关于 Soviet Dramatic Theory，就是苏联的什么戏剧理论相关的。但今天美丽老师讲的话题可能跟他自己的研究不是直接相关，如果老师们有兴趣呢，也可以后边也可以问。那我现在就把时间交给美丽老师。哦，对，这次讲座的双语都可以，老师们随意。
嗯
嗯
谢谢老师，谢谢王老师，非常感谢，你邀请我来参加这个 KACLTA 演讲会议，我先讲，就是我先做一个就是一个小个人介绍，因为其实我的母语不是中文，而
嗯
且我们都是中文老师，所以我想你可以看待我像就是你可以当我看待你的学生，对吧？
嗯
所以其实我姓井上，我叫美丽，我是中日混血，然后我是在大学才开始学中文，所以我18岁才开始学中文，我很嫉妒这些4岁5岁的学生开始上你们的中文课，可是
嗯
所以我18岁开始学中文，就是因为我对中国没有什么了解，虽然我们家是我妈妈是中国人，她是第二代的中国人，所以是而且她好像她的中文好像她没有什么中文这样对吧？她也是广东人，所以呢，我对中国一直很有兴趣，所以我开始上中文课，也开始上一些中国文化课。其实我发觉到，其实我对中文有兴趣，可是我对中国文化、中国历史更有兴趣。可是没有中文语言，其实我不能接触到那些中国历史，不能接触到中国思想，还有不能接触到中国人。所以其实我从大一到大六继续学中文。我2年级出国留学，我去了南京大学跟我在样板巷大学，所以我在他们的那个留学项目就是学中文，然后我回国就花了一年半时间在台湾当志愿者，所以我就听着就是 temporary like gap year 去了台湾1年半时间学中文当志愿者跟人家沟通。那个回来，我继续在阳明山大学念书，我主修中文和英文，还有在我好像3年级的时候，央百罕大学开始他们第一次的 flagship 项目，所以我就申请了。可是我是英文专业，他们对英文专业没有什么兴趣，所以我在那个申请let's say like the application 里面就写了我是媒体，就是我研究的是媒体，因为我以前做过很多的口语历史所以我我当了央白罕大学的第一个 cohort 的一个成员，然后去了南京，在央白罕待了1年准备，然后又去了南京1年，啊、呃演呃在南京大学上了一些媒体课、一些文学课。 我发觉到其实那些媒体课、文学课，其实我百分之好像 like 98% 我听不懂。所以虽然我上了那么多课，我还是听不懂，因为是专门的，是专题，就是 like professional，对吧？所以发觉到其实我的中文很差，就是有很大的，就是有很多like 很大的，there's a lot of room for improvement。我发现，所以呢，我实习了在，我实习在一个媒体社，还有一个扬子晚报，在一个新闻社，还有一个 radio station。所以那时候 flagship 其实它没有什么 structure，对吧？所以我们是自己找自己的实习机会。所以我依靠着就是人对人的关系。然后我们那时候，其实我在 flagship 的时候要找自己的房子，对吧？我做了一个中介的一个摩托车上，就就开到南京去找房子，对吧？所以我们所有的事情我们要自己做。flagship 之后，其实我的中文比较好，比我现在的中文好多了。然后就回国，然后那时候我就读了研究所，读了硕士，我读了 MFA Creative Writing 写散文的一个硕士。我读了2年发现其实我要工作，我要赚钱，所以我申请了就是 teaching like Southern 就是美国的南部的 Southern Teachers Association，你就发一个 resume 给他们，然后他分给所有的就是他们私立的学校。所以我到了就是华盛顿地区当了中文老师，虽然我没有当过中文老师，他请我到他们那边开了一个中文项目，其实我没有那个资格，没有那个能力，可是我就试了，然后开了就是K through no ninth so like ninth through 12th。So 我开了一个1年级到4年级的中文项目，然后就是我们有一个 AP，我们学生也考了那个 AP test。那个之后就回了，就去了斯坦福大学念了博士。呃，那我现在在这儿，所以你可以看得出，其实我的中文有很多的限制，很多的 limitations，以前比较好。可是我讲的这样，就是因为中文能改变学生的生活。然后我在这个路程上遇到很多学中文跟我一样的学中文的学生，对吧？然后现在他们在很多不同的地方做不同的工作，然后我们的脉络就是那个脉络非常非常宝贵。所以我很感动我的老师。你们王老师你在 DLI 对吧？你在教我就是我美国的很多学生中文，所以so I'm going to switch to English now because I'm going to do the talk in English. But I'm just so grateful for the language teaching that I've had. Now, today, actually, I'm gonna speak a little bit more Chinese actually because it will sound better. 所以今天的分享就叫做 Creative Tactics and Resilient Strategies。我2020年到了 Center College，这是我第一个post PhD 工作，OK，然后我到了 Center College 的时候，我们只有2门中文课，其实算是4门中文课，1年级跟2年级。所以今天的讲座就是讲我从 two classes right two classes 到现在的中文主修、中文 major、中文 minor，的过程，还有中文同事，I have 才进来了，他是我的那个伙伴，right? She's my partner in crime. So today we'll talk about how I built the program. And if there's anything useful to you, then please, take notes. If you have any questions, let me know. For the roadmap, right, I want to talk first about Center College, our demographics, our reputation, um, history of Chinese at Center, and then a beginning, a middle, and an end, right, of talking about like student recruitment, course development, and program building. And feel free if you have questions to stop me mid-share while I'm speaking, and we can address what I have on screen or any questions. So Center College, okay. We are a private liberal arts college in Danville, Kentucky. We're about an hour and a half away from 45 minutes from Lexington, Kentucky, and an hour and a half from Louisville. These are bigger cities that most people know about. Our undergraduate enrollment is about 1,400 students. Half of these students are athletes. So I think that's somewhat unusual, or to me, it was unusual. Our faculty, 150 members. We're not a very, my footprint is not very large. And so we get to know, it's easy to get to know all the faculty members. It's easy to get to know all the staff, which has its advantages when you need to collaborate. We have a number of majors, and we didn't have a Chinese, even though in terms of majors, we had French. In terms of language, we had French, we had German, we had classics, and we had Spanish as majors. And we had some Japanese classes and some Chinese classes and some Arabic classes, but no majors for non-Western languages. And that became really important. As far as Center College goes, we're known for our undergraduate teaching. Well, Swan, right? Like we're known for like a good, we offer a lot of financial aid. Most of our students receive financial aid, some more than 50, many of them more than 50% of financial aid. We're in the top 50-ish national liberal arts colleges. We're number 25 for study abroad. So Center really markets itself for it prides itself in teaching, affordability, and study abroad, right? These are our three big brand pieces. And 85% of our students study abroad before graduating. So because Center prides itself on study abroad, you would think that language would be integral to our curriculum, right? So we require at Center 1 year of language for all students, like 2 courses. And our language teachers had to fight for that, and we're still fighting for it. We wanted 2 years, but it was hard to get 1. So we have 1 year required. When I got to Center, or before I arrived at Center, we hired, I don't know if you know Kyle Anderson, some of you who've been around for a while know Kyle, but he was hired in 2010 to teach 2 levels of Chinese. And while he was at Center, he also started the IFSA Butler Shanghai Study Abroad program. We went through Butler University, I think IFSA, and this international studies program, or international studies like language and study abroad program. We used them to go to Shanghai. So we had that program in place for a number of years, but during COVID, which is when I arrived, the program ended, or the students we wouldn't allow students to go for 4 years, which is quite a long time. In 2020, when I arrived, so this line denotes when I arrived, okay? So from 2010 to 2020, we had 2 language levels, 1 faculty and 1 visiting assistant professor later when that tenure faculty left and went into the study abroad office, and then later left the college. And then we had study abroad in Shanghai. Students who were taking, when I arrived in 2020, the students who were taking the 2nd year level course had taken Chinese from the visiting assistant professor, and some of them had studied Chinese in high school. So when I arrived, I taught 3 levels, so a 110, a 210, and the 210 was a mixed level class. So it was a 210 class plus we called it 330, okay? And I had maybe a handful of students in those classes, maybe 5 in the 210, 310 class, and about maybe 12 or 13 in the 110. And I'll go over, and then in 2021, I added another level, a 400 level, and it was just me and no study abroad yet. But I proposed to take students abroad to Malaysia that year during our January Center term. And also, I'll talk more about these years in detail. We had a tenure track search approved, and a major and minor approved. So in 2 years, we had some big, daring, bold moves. And I couldn't have done this without the support of our dean, who had a vision for bringing Chinese to like making Chinese an actual program. But I had to like kind of sell it to her, and she got on board, and she really supported it. And this was not without faculty objections. And then 2325 with Jingjing, we have maintained the 4 levels. We have 2 faculty. We have a study abroad in Taipei we do the ICLP language immersion, as well as the just a regular study abroad exchange. And then we have the IFSA Butler in Shanghai, but they went for 1 year, but now our program, our study abroad's tabling it because of the expense. So we're looking for a new one. And we also have like our Malaysia study abroad. And then we have a number of electives and upper level courses and gen ed courses that we offer. So 2325 will be the part 2 of our talk, and Cai Jingjing and I will talk about that together because we worked on it together. So, oh yeah, and so we've had, and since then, this number at the bottom is wrong. In terms of our major and minor graduates, we've since had like 15 majors and 15 minors graduate, which is, I think, pretty good for 3 years of having a program. Now I'll tell you the big themes that I want to talk about tonight are student-centered program, research-centered program, and community engaged program, right? I'll add other things, but these are the kind of the highlights. So if we go back in time, go back to 2020 with me, it was COVID. It was the worst of COVID, I believe. And we were teaching hybrid classes, and we were teaching block schedules. So students only had 1 or 2, like they only had 1 or 2 classes for half of the quarter, and then 1 or 2 classes for the other half. And so I saw my students every day for more than 1 hour a day. And this was beneficial to the program because it let me know very quickly who the students were, right? I got to know them on a personal basis. And we spent so much time together, and they were so lonely because they didn't have any social outlets. They formed relationships with each other in our class. And I tried to keep it, fun and conversational, and tried to get to know them. So that was the key to building the program, was getting to know the students and figuring out what they wanted and what they had done before and where they wanted to go. What was their vision? Why were they learning Chinese? What did they want to achieve with Chinese, right? So in that first year, we had this 110 class, we had the 210 class, and then it was that hybrid I mentioned before, that split class, the 330. And then in the spring, I convinced the students who were in the 30 class to keep going. And so then we had to create a new course, which was Chinese 340. And notice it was termed advanced Chinese. These students were not advanced, and the class was by no means advanced. And later I had to address that, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But
Lily 老师, did you
yeah.
stop share?
Oh, did I stop share?
Anymore?
You can't see it anymore?
Yeah. How about others? Do you guys see?
I did not mean to stop it, but here, we'll come back.
Okay.
可以吗？
Yeah.
现在可以看. Okay. So that first year, right? As I was getting to know the students, I used this, what I call this personal plan, to get to know them. And I received this personal plan idea from Carl Robertson, who teaches at Trinity University in Texas. And at the time, again, there was a group of ACS, Associated Colleges of the South, a group of Chinese teachers who got together during COVID because everyone was, like so isolated. And we were sharing ideas, and Carl shared this plan, which I thought was really nice. And so I tweaked it and revised it. But it's basically what many teachers do in your class on the first day. It's like, have you studied Chinese before? Have you ever been to China? Why are you studying, right? So I did that. And then I added this piece because I really wanted to know where the program could go. And this first part was Carl's idea, right? So ask the students, what do you want to achieve? Do you want to be novice? Do you want to be intermediate? Do you want to be advanced speakers, right? And why? And then I added this, why are you here? Do you want just a language requirement? Do you want more than a language requirement? Do you want to study abroad? And these last three lines I added later, with when we added the Chinese major and minor. Um, and so I just got a sense of, I wanted the students to see, to reflect a little bit about why they were studying Chinese. And then I created this thing for myself because I thought, if I'm going to build these new courses, I need to know when my students are available, when they can take them. And 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 so then I asked them to check, if you had to plan out the next 4 years, where would you, which Chinese classes would you take? Right. And at the time it was just language, right? And there was no, the 310 was actually 330 and 340. And then there was no 410, right? But then I asked them, okay, well, if we could create some new classes, what classes would you take? And this is again a revised one, but it's similar to what I had then. And I kind of put classes that I wanted to teach and classes that might be relevant to their interests. I just wanted to get a sense of what kind of topics are you interested in? And a lot of these courses were interdisciplinary and cultural and historical. I thought, what would be interesting to a student? And then I asked them more particular questions. Like I wanted to know about them. Like, what is it that you want to, what interests do you have in Chinese? Like, are you interested in art or history or law or sports or career? Like if you could go to China, what kind of domain would you want to find yourself in? And then what kind of projects do you do for your major? So I wanted them to start thinking long term. Who am I? Why am I doing this? Where am I going? What could I possibly do? Right. So that was actually really important. And I made the 100 class. Um, I made all my classes do this, and I still do it. And then, just what else do you want me to know about you as a learner? And sometimes they'd share that, learning Chinese is so hard, characters are hard, or I love this, right? So it was just about getting to know each other. And I would make them meet with me at the beginning of the semester and also the end of the semester to go over this personal plan. The other big thing that I did that I think worked and that we still do now in our program is I made them start developing a research mindset. So not only did they think about like not only did they have the student-centered component, who am I, where do I want to go? I wanted them to think about what questions do you have that you want to answer, and why not start thinking about them now? This is something that Flagship taught me. When I was at Flagship, it was very project based, and most of my Chinese learning came when I was researching something else. So like maybe not just taking a Chinese class, but when I was actually working on a project or trying to like interview international students about their experiences in China, or, trying to recruit people for a commercial. So the research mindset, so this is what I call cultural report, and this is the 1.0 version of it. So basically the 文化报告, right? It's just a chance for the students to develop, so to pick a topic that they're interested in and think about that topic, get the kind of contextualize that, or pick a phenomenon or an event or a historical event or an idea, and contextualize it with like kind of the easy who, where, what, when, how, why, like really basic questions. And then from that, not develop an opinion, not develop like a thesis, but just develop a question. Like, how can we have an opinion about something we know so little about, right? So it was just about helping them think about how to write a good question. So this is how I did it. So step one, identify just an interest. What are you interested in? Have you heard of, like, maybe someone had just seen in the newspaper like Fanqing, like angry youth, or maybe they were kind of coming out and they were interested in the LGBT community, right? Or I had a student who was like obsessed with coffee, and she was really interested in coffee drinking, coffee consumption in China. And then the student later, and I'll tell you more about the student later, but so just what's an interest that you have? Um, so they would find their interest, they would find a way in with like a newspaper report or something that they had seen, and then they would start contextualizing it, its historical, political, economic, social, cultural origins, a who, what, when, why. And then they would eventually create a research question. But so here's just an example. This was the first one, my student Chang Yi. It looks like it's in spring, right? But I let the students pick their topic. I didn't assign them a topic. I just wanted to see where their minds would go. And often they go to kind of the things that they've heard. So sometimes they're kind of stereotypical, kind of flat topics, but the idea is to make them richer and larger and more interesting and complex. So Sienna, she wanted to do the one child policy. Big surprise, right? Students are always interested in the one child policy. But so then she did a quick what, a why, and how, and then the end, a change. And it's not like a very like it's just like a very simple report, kind of exposing students to the one child policy. And this is important. And then I said, so what, so what, why do we care? And then from there, from her why do we care, and she went to this research policy, her research question, which was about social dynamics. What's the social dynamic of being a one of the a 独生子女, right? Are there drawbacks? Are there benefits? And all these things, because it's the 1.0 version, I know that I know that there are probably lots of like limitations to their thinking here, but it's just to get them started thinking, start them thinking about it. So this I talk about here in the first year of the program because this was really important to the long-term like goals of the program. Students needed to have a goal, right? And then they needed to feel like they were moving somewhere. Now, the hard thing, because I was a Chinese language learner, the hard thing with learning Chinese is you're so bad for so long, right? The cognitive gap and the linguistic gap is so vast, so wide, it's so demoralizing. So the key is feed them the things that they're interested in sooner from the very beginning so that they stay engaged, because the cultural reports are like by hands down their favorite thing. And the students always surprise me with like their topics. They're looking at like art, what is it, like what do they call it when they like the art business and all the billionaires who are storing their art offshore, putting their money into art offshore. They always come up with topics that are fun and surprising. And because you have 15 students with very different minds, you expose them to very different things. And then they're interested in taking another class with you later, right? To continue researching this. And I would ask them in class, what classes are you taking right now? And is there any way that you could do like that our studies of China map onto those classes in international studies or in business or in law or in biology? And so then I had a student who eventually did a larger scale project on the Three Gorges Dam with her environmental science, like senior project. And I had a student who did our capstone, kind of our very kind of elite kind of research project, a John C. Young research project. She did it on caffeine cosmopolitanism in China, which was based on her first cultural report in my class, right? And then it became a 4-year project. She later went on to get a Fulbright in Taiwan, and then she went to Georgetown University and studied international studies there, right? So, but just this little seed, this research mindset, turned these students into long-term learners, and I think that's the key, the long term. So other things. So this is the first year still. I'm sorry, I'm still talking about the first year, but we had the courses, we had the personal plan, getting to know them personally. We had the research mindset. And then I wanted to show them, I wanted to have them meet people who had been to China, right? They had never been to China, or some of them had, but they didn't know very many people. I wanted to show them how interesting China could be. So I brought, this is my advisor, Li Haiyan from Stanford. She came and did a literature convocation on like spy novels. This is Liang Luo from UK. She works on the avant-garde. So I brought in scholars, and I also brought in practitioners. So this is my friend Christian. He's a documentary maker. He lived and worked in China. He doesn't speak great Chinese, but he has this interesting skill, and he's very interested in China. And so we started, because in our classes we had these projects that were like we were making film trailers, and so he came in and gave us a workshop, and he talked about like his experiences in China. This is Fan Xing from University of Toronto. She works on theater. We had this is Charlie Zhang at UK. This was not in the first year. This was a different year. But I just want to show that, they talked about Hong Kong and Taiwan relationships. So we didn't shy away from the difficult. And then this is my student, Alfonso, and this is their favorite, this handsome young man in the right bottom corner. Alfonso was my student in Beijing when I was working at the high school. I directed a program for this international Chinese kind of exchange program for high school students. But he was a student. He hated studying Chinese. And I said, Alfonso, you have to do something while you're here. We're here for the summer. It's a research program. You have to do something. I'm like, what do you like? And he said, I like film. And I'm like, okay, Alfonso. I took one of my TAs and I told my TA, okay, just watch films with him, Chinese films. And Alfonso became a filmmaker. His dream was to go to NYU Film School, which is a top film school in the US. He got in and now he teaches at NYU, film at NYU, and his office is next to like Spike Lee. And Alfonso's big break though with film was going to work in Xi'an at a Chinese film company, the big one, like the big Xi'an like film. I don't know what it's called, the big film production company. But when he was with me in Beijing and Shanghai, he wouldn't learn Chinese, but he would watch film. And so Chung Kai-ge, Wang Kar-wai, he studied these greats. And he like, if you watch his films, you see images, you see kind of the style of the avant-garde, like 1980s, 1990s film artists in his work, but he's done really well. So I brought him to campus and the students loved him because he later learned Chinese. When he got home from China, even though he hated Chinese, he went to NYU and he's like, I'm not letting this language beat me. I'm going to study Chinese. And he did, and he did terribly, and he kept doing it, and then he got better and better, and now his Chinese is very good, and he goes back and forth between China as a filmmaker. So success story. So the key is I brought guest speakers were like them, who had studied Chinese and had done something cool with it. I also brought experts so they could see what China could hold for them. Let me see if I can go to this next slide. So in addition to guest speak, so that's kind of the marketing part, like the vision, and then community was another big part. So going back to the students, they were so lonely and they wanted like friends. And the students, like I'll just say, the students who take Chinese, sometimes they're we have very different types, right? But I had a broad range of students and they were kind of lonely. And so the way that I got them to get to know each other, I forced them to, I had, we did these dumpling making activities with the German program. So we did like German fillings and Chinese fillings and did them. And we kind of elevated the experience by making them at the president's house. So students felt like it was a special thing to go to the president's house. So we did these like typical activities that many of our language teachers do, but we tried to like make them a little like more exciting, right? So we did the German collaboration because we know our students, but we wanted to I guess I wanted to recruit more. So we did it with the German club, my German colleague and our Japanese students. We did mooncake making, we did boba tea tasting, we did our end of the year party. We took advantage of moments like the AAPI Georgia shootings, which were terrible, but students were like feeling so lonely and estranged and needed support that we did like my Chinese tutors did a boba tea community gathering and we had like 100 students just come out. And that was like a solidarity, like for me, like it was kind of a community forming moment. So never underestimate the importance of your student communities. And the way that we did that too, that I did that was like I created tutors. I recruited tutors that were both native speaking Chinese students as well as Chinese language learners. And I made them tutor together, right? A language student and a native speaker. And the students went to both at the same time. And the purpose of that was to create friendships. Because this tutoring in the past that students told me, because I asked them, like, what was tutoring like? Did you have them? Or did you have pen pals? Or, like, they're like, well, we did in the past, but everyone felt that they were just being taken advantage of. And they really hated it. So we created tutors that were paid. I found resources on campus to pay the tutors. And then I did that kind of native, non-native speaker mix. So they'd be friends first. And then soon enough, all the students kept going not all, but a number of them would go to tutoring and just start hanging out. And they would study together and just hang out. And then they became then they reinvigorated the Chinese Culture Club, which was kind of tanking. And it was a mixture of native students, not native speaking students and non-native speaking students. And to this day, it's a very cohesive, strong group, and they lift the burden of work from us. But that was really important to creating community. Sorry. Oh, okay. Okay. So that's all in a year. So that's just 1 year. The second year, it's more of the same. And I won't get into so much detail. But the second year, in addition to so I kept adding classes. So in that first year, I found out that one of my students had a brother and they lived in Shanghai before. And his brother was a senior at the college and he had studied Chinese for 8 years. And I said, "Why isn't your brother in Chinese?" He's like, "Yeah, I know." So he put his brother in touch with me. I found other students who had studied Chinese and I found enough to create a 400 level class. I just had 4 students, but it was enough to convince the administration to open up this next level class. And the students, I had them write letters. I said, "Oh, we love Chinese. We love it so. We want to do all these things. We wish we had this upper level course. Study abroad isn't running. We really need this course." Right. So actually not having study abroad during the COVID years worked to our advantage because it shut down this the program so that our students could say that there was no other course available for them. So we were able to open up the 300, another 300, another 400. So then we had a 400 level course. And with those on the books, I could then go to the dean and say, "Hey, what do you think about a Chinese minor?" So I wrote up a minor proposal, Chinese minor proposal, and then I submitted it to our committee, our CCAS community on academics, curriculum and standards. And they sent it back to me and they said, "What would this look like if it were a major?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I was just going to go for the minor. I was like doing one thing at a time, small thing at a time." They said, "Just tell us what the major would look like." So I'm going to show you some of my documents for that. So proposal for the creation of a Chinese major. Initially, it was a minor, but I kept it really simple and I modeled it off of our German colleagues' major because they're also a small program. And I also took into account that our students they love they love the international studies major, they love the business major, they loved all the majors but the small ones. And I thought if they take Chinese as a major, it's going to have to be as a second major. So it has to be small enough for them to do. And also, I didn't even have a colleague yet at the time. I thought, I don't know how much we can do. So we kept it really flexible. So basically, this was the major 4 language level classes. I mean, so 6 language classes up to the 3rd level, and then just 3 electives. And because of faculty pushback, because the faculty at the time were trying to get higher salaries, they didn't want to hire another tenure track line. They really didn't want this program to go through. I had to and they were really afraid of China being taking over, they were afraid of China functioning as like this hegemonic superpower on our campus. They were like, "What about the South Asians? What about the Southeast Asians?" Right? Like they were concerned that China would be too dominant. I had to go to all of them and try to like placate them. And so then we had this one China related elective in a non-Chinese course. I had to say, "Well, this will actually help your programs because we're going to put in a requirement for your program." So for any of you thinking about how do I navigate this really sticky, icky situation with other colleagues, talk to them, see what they need, and try to carve out a place for them in your curriculum. And like the China related elective, I mean, we have a history professor who teaches a class on like Mao. We have like an IST professor that does some work on China, right? So like, even though they're just small pieces, and we have a course on Asian religions, it's very general, but Asian religions, a lot comes from China. So we had to like stick that in. So that was the proposal for the major. And then I wish I could have required study abroad, but the study abroad program was shut down and I just couldn't. And still today it's kind of fluctuating with US China relations, right? And so that was it. And then I had Chinese language electives. This is all we had at the moment. So on the books, we had these courses, which is really important to have them on the books before you go up for the major or minor, or it's because it provides like a point of data for you. And then here were the English language electives that we had at the time, not that many, but, and then these are the additional electives. These are the classes that we had at center that they could add. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay, so the big year of my second year was like creating that major minor document and going to a bunch of meetings, speaking with my colleagues. And then for the students, they were moving from their cultural report 1.0 to their 2.0 version, where they actually did a little bit more research and did kind of sturdier projects. So from the beginning, the projects have been experiential for our program, as well as professional. Because as a flagship student, I learned so much from like making a resume, like working on like a practical project. I thought, okay, from the get-go, let's just make this something that will be useful to them, that they can put in an online portfolio that they can then kind of market themselves with, right? So skits, film trailers, vlogs. We did websites, oral history projects. What I realized though in the first 2 years, my projects were way too hard. My projects were way too big. And so with Jingjing, I've been like working on like making them smaller. But the point is, the students feel like they feel empowered when they do something practical and cool that they can kind of show off. So students were making these websites on tourism to different Chinese speaking communities and countries and locations. And they were doing it from an angle. Like, so one was like LGBT tourism in Taiwan. Another one was like colonialism in like, so it was like, it was cool. And then they were creating like dialogues and sample interactions that they would have at the front desk of a hotel or in a cab, right? So doing things that they feel are relevant and that kind of make them look a little flashy, right? And all of these had this research component and they were building their research ideas. So the idea is like from year 1 to year 4, you could have a really cool project that would then launch you into graduate school or launch you into a great job. And for Sienna, I'm really proud of her, the girl with the cultural report. She went on to work for Ernst and Young as a consultant, and she's been doing really well, right? And all these little things kind of, and she keeps coming back to Center, and she donates money to Center for the Chinese program, right? She's so moved. She was so moved, like she was like the Chinese program is such an important part of her life here at Center. So thinking about these professional projects, sometimes one student came to me for an independent study, and we don't get credit for these, but I just had to do it. But I turned her project into something useful for the program. I had her do a film series. So with resources, we had the tail end of a loose grant when I arrived. So I had money and I bought a bunch of films of Chinese language films. And then the student curated a kind of a new wave film series. So she researched them, wrote about them, introduced them, and kind of had this activity on campus. And then it was followed by my student Alfonso, who was the New York City filmmaker. He came to do a workshop. And so they were all learning how to make film. And then their final projects were those film trailers and film vlogs. So try to think about like how to connect all these things. The extra work that you have to do, can you make it easier by making a student do it? These collaborations now, these are some of our collaborations that we started a couple years ago that we still do today. So the flyers are a little are like little not, they're not they're a little like, well, this one is in 2024, so obviously it's not 2021, but we started it in 2021. We started doing activities that would market us. So here are some of our collaborations. And here's the Malaysia study abroad. We went to the University of Malaysia and the University of Sans Malaysia. And this was really, really a wonderful experience. It was a course on ceramics, cuisine, and colonialism that I did with my art colleague. And we took, 28 students to Malaysia and met with these two universities. And we had like student-led exchange activities. And then I kept bringing, my students, these students up top were my students in Chinese class. When I was at Stanford, they were in my graduate classes. So I brought them in, they're doing interesting things. Travis TV was my good friend when I was on flagship. He's the consul, the embassy, the US embassy consul general in Beijing. He was in Wuhan when COVID started, and he was responsible for getting all the families with babies in the US, for getting grandparents over to the US to take care of the babies. They call it the grandparent operation, right? So these are people I wanted to show them, like, these are cool people just like you who learned Chinese and ended up doing really cool things with it. These were my two students also in Beijing. Here's Alfonso and his friend Dennis from Turkey, right? And this was another flagship colleague. So again, just showing them. And so eventually the major was passed, not without some challenges, and we hired this awesome colleague, plug for Jingjing, and she's made life so much better. And so Jingjing was hired in 2022 and started working in 2023. So 2 years of lots and lots of things. And then we have Jingjing. And then our next part two is going to be about how we developed kind of a more stable interdisciplinary curriculum with language and content courses. So here, May 2022, we have a new Chinese language and minor. And here's a funny quote by me. It's the result of a decade-long collaborative effort, right? But it was because the teachers before me set the stage for and cultivated the students that I inherited. And then we just built on that. So so if the takeaways are these, the program that I developed was student driven, and I gave student this tool of the research mindset, long-term goals, research mindset, professional projects, collaborative approach from tutors. I had student workers now, student workers in the Chinese Cultural Club that do most of the cultural lifting. And then there's a system for how all these pieces work together. And then administrative alignment has to be aligned with the administrative's needs. And whenever you need something, you have to keep going back to the administration and saying it in their terms so that they think it's their idea and they think it's something that the school really wants. So I'll stop there and open up to questions if you have any.
Great, great. Thank you. I'm used to calling you 美丽老师.
也可以啊.
Thank you so much. I was just each time this is the second time I'm hearing it. Each time when I'm listening to hearing it, I feel like 热血沸腾. I like wow, it's like so brilliant.
No.
Yeah, made the COVID work for you. That's so great. Our audience, do you have any questions for 美丽老师 about any of the strategies?
I'll come back to these.
Yeah, you could type, or you can just use your mic to say your questions. While waiting, I do have a question because my college is similar but very different from you because we are not business oriented. We are free. We're very different. What I'm curious about is because I heard I think it's a great strategy to get to know the students and get their personal plan. I might try that with my students too, just out of curiosity and see if there is a way to go. But my question is, how does the academic advising work at Center College?
So academic advising actually hasn't been helpful to my program because a lot of academic advisors say, oh, you've taken your first year of language. You don't need to take any more language. Check, right?
Yeah.
Actually, they drive students away from our program. And in the sciences, that's where like my German colleague and we try to work on our relationships with people in the science division and try to teach in their classes. So we have my German colleague, she does German and biology, but I work with German and with Chinese and business, trying to just make just to get them to be aware of our program and how cool it could be for a student to speak Chinese and also think about neuroscience, right? And so when the students start creating projects related to China, then their teachers also see it, and it kind of plants a seed in their head. And so right now I'm teaching a business culture in China class that counts for a class for the business major. And that's been really helpful in getting students over. But back to your question about advising, they usually advise students out. So this year, though, the language teachers kind of banded together and explained to all the advisors, they created a document to say, okay, this is the language you use to talk about um, language classes with students. And it wasn't about encouraging them to take language classes per se, but it was just like kind of giving them the language so they wouldn't take the easy way of just saying, oh, just take a language that you've taken before, take the easy way out. We say, like, why don't you try something new? What are you interested in? Right? Yeah. Well, Asha, did that
So,
answer your question, or do you have like a problem with advising at Berea?
no, I'm just wondering whether do the faculty have a play an advising role?
So now, more inviting, and I think it's all when you work at a small college like Center, it's relation based, right? It's interpersonal. So the more friends you can have, the better. And I think teachers at teaching colleges like ours love to talk about teaching. And so then if there are opportunities to do a teaching workshop, right? Or
Mm,
to show off a strategy or participate in like the career readiness initiatives, right? Like
yeah.
my business culture and Chinese class, we do this big banquet. We invite people from all the departments and staff and all sorts of students. And I invite faculty with China experience, like to come or, and so it's about like networking and then finding that common point of like, oh, Chinese helps students think this way and you're doing it like this. Oh, let's talk about this, having those like kind of like hallway conversations about how to teach. And then they realize, oh, Chinese is so useful. I never thought about that. And if you could get
Mm,
in front of more students by going to your colleagues' classes, that's really powerful. So Jingjing, she went in front of a colleague's class to talk about her publication on everything everywhere all at once. Just recently I was teaching in front of like the international studies like class. We read Hao Jingfang's Folding Beijing, and then I came in to do a little mini lecture, right? So if you can, and I've taught in a history class before, so if you can, as you're conversing with your colleagues talking about shared interests and their topics, like, what are you teaching? Oh, that's so cool. I also teach this thing. Oh, we should
mm.
collaborate, right? Like, and then they think, oh, I would love to take a day off of teaching
Mhm.
and you could come
Great.
in and teach for me, right? So finding those kind of win-win moments. Yeah.
That's actually another great strategy. But in the chat, there is another, your colleague asked you a hard question, I guess.
Uh,
If
if
you
you
were
were going
going
to
to
do
do
one
one
thing
thing,
differently, what would it be? Sorry, I keep clicking on the wrong thing. Good question, Jing Jing. Hire you sooner. Just kidding. No, if I could do one thing
oh,
differently, what would it be? Um,
I think maybe you already answered the question. That was actually it.
she liked that one. No, but I
I
think
think she meant to ask you that question to get that answer.
no, I think one thing, okay, so I think I did a lot of things well. But if I could do it differently, like I think the creating that system, that community, like I love the tutor, student worker, culture club system that we have now. And if I could write up the handouts and like create better meetings earlier to create like that kind of structure and flow, then I would have had to do less in terms of like cultural events and flyers and all those things that kind of put you underwater, right? No one has time to like contact a friend, contact a friend, make a flyer or book the room, right? Um, so it's I think creating systems sooner and faster and explaining them, writing them down. Jinji and I just wrote up a handbook for our tutors this year, but I'm like, I should have just done that. It was all here and it was in little documents here and there. Should have just brought it together and systematized it sooner, right? Because that's kind of obvious. Like, oh, you could have a student worker who makes your flyers and does your like kind of grunt work for you, and they liaise with the tutors and communicate with them, right? And then you just have a meeting once a month with all of them so you can get on the same page. And the Chinese Culture Club, tutors and student workers are usually the execs in the Chinese Culture Club, right? Um, so kind of working those three things together a little bit sooner and more systematically would have made a big difference. Another thing, I kind of lucked it. I think COVID was really useful because everything shut down and no one was doing anything on campus. So suddenly, like my German colleague and I came in, and we didn't know what to do because we were new. We were doing all these things, like we were making food, we were doing German Chinese fusion online live stream, right? Because we couldn't meet with our students. And so the students were moved because we were doing something for them that nobody else was doing. And I think that's it, is that interpersonal relationship, that welcoming nature, like, come, you can be part of us. Like, we want to get to know you. When I showed up at their student events, I went to the international student events that first year, and they're like, "Oh, professors never come to our events," right?
Mm.
And so I went to their club events, and they were really happy to have me there. And then they started taking my classes, right? So the key is, another thing, for Jinji's question, what I've done sooner, I would have figured out how to like figure out which students had taken Chinese. I would have done that much sooner. I did it kind of at the end of the semester, but I would have just started talking to students. Who do you know who takes Chinese? Or who do you know who studied Chinese? Right? Or use the cultural events and really interact with the students, like, oh, why are you here? You've taken Chinese before. Oh, you've taken Japanese. Oh, you should take Chinese, right? I would have done a lot. I did a lot of that, but I could have been more strategic about it. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for the wonderful, exciting talk. I have to learn a lot. I think my big problem is I'm not very good at selling stuff. I'm
Uh,
not good at like
salesman.
saying like reaching out to. I also go to all the events, but my students don't seem to be as moved as the probably should.
I think I think that you have something though that they're gonna like. I think everyone is different too. That's the thing. Everyone is different, and so you're gonna all have a different kind of way of going about this. But Wang Laoshi, I've met you, and you're just like really cool, right? For the first time I've met, I was like, she's so cool. Like, finding your what is the thing that you do well, and then really go from there. And like for me, as Zhongru Hunxue from this rural area who learned Chinese or Japanese, like my thing was like talking to people, right?
Mm, yeah.
Um,
I
and
always admire that kind of personality. I need a colleague like you at I can help them full support, but I'm not the one that goes out
then,
and do
and I would be happy to talk to you, like anyone who wants, like I'd happy to do like a one-on-one to talk about like what are the things that you have going for you,
that.
and start from there, right? Because we are all going to do things differently.
Yeah.
But think about what your resources are, right?
Yeah.
And I think these student driven research mindset, these are easy, anyone can take in.
Yeah. I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Even if it's for attractive majors to Asian studies at this point, because we are under Asian studies.
Yeah.
So seriously, yeah, very, very good strategies. That's why I think it's worth hearing it again and maybe again so that I don't forget it. And each time you may have some new inspiration. Um, yeah, so time has come to 8:30. Unless, does anybody have any questions for 美丽老师? Mm, and since we're mostly right, we can just talk anytime. We
Yeah.
don't need to drag on a Saturday evening.
Mhm.
So thank you for coming, especially Wang 老师 from California. um, well, we'll conclude tonight's event. Thank you for your exciting talk again, like 美丽老师. And thanks for everybody who comes, and 郑老师 for supporting this platform.
谢谢。
大家谢谢谢谢。
Okay,
哎，那
okay, let's look forward to Jinjin's next talk.
没有，我就想刚刚这就是刚好就是反正现在大家都在嘛，就顺便问一下，
你可以 stop recording.
对，start recording，因为我。